The Epiphany of the Lord has to be one of the most spectacular feast days in the liturgical year of the Church. It is a day of great mystery and wonder and even intrigue. And it's not a surprise that this event has impressed itself so deeply on the Church's memory and why she celebrates it with such great solemnity. This morning I just wanted to do a couple of things with you, one of which would be to point out a couple Epiphany fun facts, if there's such thing as Epiphany fun facts. The first would be that on the surface of it all, if there truly were Magi, and their number is 3, and they actually lived, shouldn't we know where the tomb is so we could go visit them? Surely, personages of such historical and religious significance, their whereabouts are not unknown. Well, I have good news for you. You can book a flight to Germany, visit the cathedral in the city of Cologne, and there visit the shrine of the Three Kings. And just because you didn't know that, presuming some don't, just because you don't know that does not mean that literally tens upon tens of thousands of pilgrims visit that shrine every year precisely to venerate the remains of the Magi, whose number are 3, whose tomb we have the whereabouts to, and yes, can be visited. And someone may say, well, that's all good and fine, but whatever happened to their presents? Where's their presents? Well, not so fast. Not so fast. Because you can go to St. Paul's Monastery on Mount Athos in northeastern Greece on the Aegean Sea, and there find a reliquary that contains the gold, frankincense, and myrrh that were first presented to the baby Jesus. And despite being presumably 2,000 years old, the frankincense and the myrrh are strangely fresh and aromatic. And yes, probably with permission, given it's a monastery, you can go and visit and see the gifts presented to baby Jesus by the Magi. Well, but then it begs the question, it's like, it's been 2,000 years. How do you know? How do you know? What's the most ancient tradition in the Church regarding the gifts given to the baby Jesus by the Magi? Well, clearly, given to Jesus, they would have been received by... Any guesses? Would that be the Blessed Mother? What do you think the Blessed Mother did with them? What do you think she did with them? And I guess it doesn't matter what you think, because there they are, in a monastery in Greece, 2,000 years later. Now, some may be going, well, this is still a bit credulous, Father. I mean, come on. We're talking about Catholic legends and fables and traditions and stories and blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'll bite. Who was awake last year? Do you remember what happened late last year? You see, we've had like all these technological advances, and we have new scientific methods at our disposal. And so it was decided last year, once again, to study the Shroud of Turin, because nobody seems to know what it is, except those who believe. And with all of our updated technology and our improved scientific methods, oh my goodness, what was discovered, that it's exactly what people thought it has been for centuries. The burial cloth of Jesus Christ bearing his image at the moment he rose from the dead. But see, now we have a little conundrum on our hand. Do you see the conundrum I'm building for you? I want to do it deliberately. Because see, if it's like 2,000 years ago, and the Shroud of Turin is presumably the burial cloth of Jesus Christ with the image of his resurrection on the fabric, how did we end up with it 2,000 years ago? We're coming back to who? Who? Who would keep something so precious belonging to her divine Son? Huh? You see? The Blessed Mother did not just keep the words of Jesus Christ in her heart. She also preserved the treasures that were associated with him. And before she left this world in her assumption into heaven, she entrusted them to the church to be preserved. And so now the question you're forced to answer is, why do we still have them then if first they did not belong to someone who gave them to something, namely the church? And there they are. Did you know you can go to St. Mary Major's in Rome, and in the museum there see one of the veils, some of the clothing of the Blessed Virgin Mary? Did you know that? There's lots of stuff people don't know. But it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that's not true. But here's the thing, so it's like, we look at, our scientific methods, and our scientific technologies. And we lack the humility to understand their limitations. Even our way of doing history has its limitations. You see, it's almost like it's in vogue to everybody is absolutely right except the church. When it comes to those things that she believes to be so precious, that they're worthy to be preserved, and how precious they truly are. But see, here's where our methods and our technologies fall apart, and where we lack the humility to, as it were, stay in the lane, please. People like to say that today. Because this time every year, there's always yet another article published about how this comet or that planetary conjunction is the Star of Bethlehem. Really? So comets, let's use your scientific methods and your scientific technology. So you're telling me comets and planetary conjunctions suddenly appear, suddenly disappear, suddenly reappear, and then hover exactly over the rooftop of a house where a baby is resting in its mother's arms. Oh my goodness, that takes more faith than to believe that the Shroud of Turin is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. But nobody questions it. Nobody. So what's the point in all of this? Let's just get right to the point. Did something appear to the Magi? Clearly. Do we know what it is? No, we do not. None of us was there. None of us saw it. Telescopes cannot go back in time, and not only that, one was not necessary. Because the fathers of the church and the constant tradition of the church has been that this was a special and particular phenomena that was intended for the Magi and for them alone. It was seen by no one else. No one. It was meant for them. It was meaningful to them. But whatever it was is neither here nor there. Because what we recognize is the effect. It produced an interior grace in these three men. Whatever it was produced the effect God intended. It produced an interior grace that led them on a pilgrimage of faith to an encounter with the person of Jesus Christ, the Word made flesh, through whom all things were made. That is the point. That is the point. But now we look back and we can see these things, and what it does is kind of draw to our attention how we live in a world filled with signs, but we do not perceive or recognize them because we've lost that sense of mystery and wonder and even intrigue, because we're a bunch of smarty pantses. We're all smarty pantses, right? So here's what I want to offer you as kind of like a New Year's challenge. And when I say that, I clearly include myself. And then this would be the challenge, is that instead of taking things for granted this year, to be more attentive to the signs that God is placing in our lives each and every day, and be attentive to them, discern them, and act on them. But this particular sign specifically and in particular, each and every week, at some point, you are planning the activities of the weekend. And in your planning of the activities of the weekend, you are including attending Sunday Mass. Who does that? That's weird. Hardly anybody does that. If you look at statistics, not even 25% of Catholics in this country do that. That makes you very strange and unusual, to say the least, right? But nonetheless, is it just because of out of habit that you do such things, or is there not an interior grace at work in your heart that is producing faith to draw you to the most persistent and enduring miracle in the Catholic Church? In fact, it is the reason why the Catholic Church exists. The presence of Jesus Christ in the Holy Eucharist. There's no stars. There's no journeying. There's no gifts necessary. Simply the presence of Jesus Christ, who promised to remain with us always, even until the end of time. And that is what ultimately becomes the point of Epiphany. Pay attention to the prayers of the church in today's liturgy. Listen really attentive. How does the church receive the events of Epiphany, and what does she see as its broadest significance? What is it that it is pointing to? It's not a star leading us to a baby. It is faith bringing us to the Holy Eucharist, to the presence of Jesus Christ, who left us a memorial of his passion to feed us with his body and with his blood, so that we can continue our pilgrimage, not to Bethlehem, but to our true home in heaven. Right? That's ultimately what Epiphany is about. And to begin this new year not taking that for granted, and listening to those interior graces, and the faith they produce and where they're leading you, and do those things.